Ladies and gentlemen, we are back talking some NFL DFS here today, and I'm going to be breaking down some of my favorite tournament or GPP plays for this Week 2 NFL Draftkings main slate. Now, like I did last week, I'm going to be breaking down a couple of my favorite game stacks, as well as some of my favorite individual plays and stacks. With that being said, let's dive right into it. Now, looking at some of the ownership projections here on Saturday morning, it looks like this game between the Chiefs and Jaguars is going to be very popular to target here this weekend, not only from a cash game, but also a tournament perspective. If you haven't checked out my cash games video yet from Friday, make sure you go do that as well. I always think those plays are tournament viable as well. Again, I think this Chiefs and Jags game is going to be very popular. I definitely want exposure to that. Going to highlight some individual plays and stacks from that game later on in this video, but in terms of my first game stack that I want to highlight, I'm going to talk about this game here between the Lions and Seahawks. Now, I believe there's a number of different ways that we could approach this game stack here. If you wanted to go with Geno Smith and his top two wide receivers in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and then run it back with a Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery, I have absolutely no problem with that, and it might in fact even be lower owned, attacking the passing game for the Seahawks, but personally, I prefer to go with the Lions passing attack here and then run it back with a couple of Seahawks players. So I like stacking up Jared Goff with his number one wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I believe should be able to expose that secondary a little bit, especially in the middle like we saw Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua do last week for the Los Angeles Rams. This secondary for the Seahawks allowed those Rams wide receivers to go for 24 catches and 334 receiving yards last week, and both Atwell and Nacua had 119 receiving yards themselves. I also like stacking them up with Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end, who the Lions clearly want to feature in this offense. I think his role's only going to get bigger going forward, but he also saw 5 targets in week 1. It's not something you usually see from rookie tight ends, so I absolutely like that, especially with the price savings there at $3,900. And then again, running it back with some Seahawks players, I really like Kenneth Walker in this matchup, and then again, you can pick between Lockett, Smith and Jigba, or even DK Metcalf when it comes to that other wide receiver. You could go the tight end route with Will Dissly, but I don't have any interest in that. Really, my main focus here is Kenneth Walker. I know it's a new season here, but the Lions really struggled against running backs in 2022, ranking 25th overall in rush DVOA and allowing the 6th highest yards per carry. We actually saw Rashad Penny eat against this Lions defense last year, where that game finished 48-45, 93 points. You can see the implied total here for this week is 47.5. Went way above that last season. Again, a brand new season here this year, but definitely some high scoring potential in this matchup. And then another game I like targeting here this week in terms of a stacking perspective is that game between the Chargers and Titans, and I'm going to keep this one a little more simple. I like the Chargers passing attack with Justin Herbert and his top two wide receivers, and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. You could even mix in a Quentin Johnston if you wanted to, and then run it back with Derrick Henry and leave it at that. Now, really what I'm hoping for in this stack is the Titans get out to an early lead, Henry punches in a touchdown or two, but they really force feed him the ball in the second half, trying to eat that clock, while the Chargers play catch up with their passing game. That's the game theory here with that stack, but I also really like the matchup. This Tennessee Titans secondary is not very good. We saw that all of last year, and we really picked on them all of last year as they ranked dead last in terms of fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers, but that run defense for the Titans has been pretty stout. They ranked 4th overall in fantasy points per game allowed to that position, plus no Austin Eckler here this week for the Chargers. And as for Derrick Henry, we know he can have a big game against anybody, especially when playing at home, but I also like the matchup here against this Chargers defense, who ranked 30th overall last season in terms of rush DVOA. Now, folks, before we dive into some of my favorite individual plays and stacks here, a few things I want to mention. Number one, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. We're trying to get Slydog Sports to 4,000 subs as soon as possible, and you guys have been awesome subscribing here so far this NFL season. Let's keep that rolling here into week 2. I also run a Discord channel. If you want to join that, there's a link to do so in the description below, as well as run a Draftkings YouTube league. Completely free to join both of those. Again, links in the description below. Plus, I talk Slydog Sports here. One new segment we brought to the channel this summer is called Mulligan Masters, more on the entertainment side of things. Here's a little preview to that.
Hey, look up.
All right, inside Kev. It's always the goal.
No excuses now. Nope. I said it.
It's all you, baby.
Hey, don't forget, Reed, if we tie on 18, we're scrapping. So.
Mucho gusto here today,
We
though.
have a little strategy going here.
Oh, yeah.
So there you have it, everyone. That's what SlyDog Sports is bringing to you. We got DFS content, sports betting content, not only on YouTube, but in the Discord channel, plus Mulligan Masters, which is only going to get bigger. Let's blow up SlyDog Sports here. Let's get it to 4,000 subs. Now let's dive into these individual plays and stacks. And let's kick off the positional plays here with the quarterbacks. I got two that I like outside of the quarterbacks that I just mentioned in my game stack. First being Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals, priced at $6,900 on DraftKings this week, so we would need 27.6 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. Look, we're looking for a bounce back here out of Burrow and this entire Cincinnati team playing at home here against the Baltimore Ravens. Burrow was awful last week. Maybe the worst game he's played in his NFL career. Certainly the worst game he's played since his rookie season. And maybe he is still battling with that calf strain injury. None of us would really know unless he probably worked for the Cincinnati Bengals. But I'm betting here on Burrow to bounce back. And I like this matchup here against the Ravens, who ran zone roughly 50% of the time in week 1 against the Houston Texans. If they do that here in week 2 against this Cincinnati team, Burrow should be able to expose that, as he had the 6th best passer rating versus zone coverage just last season. But again, I'm basically just banking here on a Burrow bounce back, which we all know he's very capable of doing. And then the other quarterback that I wanted to highlight here was Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mentioned earlier, I would be highlighting players from this game. Obviously, a lot of high scoring potential between the Jags and Chiefs. This game actually has the highest implied total on the main slate at 51 points. So yeah, there's a lot of shootout potential here. But I prefer to go with the Jags passing attack and then run it back with Travis Kelce, just because the Jags passing attack is a little easier to figure out where the targets are going to be going. We know it's Calvin Ridley, we know it's Evan Ingram, we know it's Zay Jones, and maybe Christian Kirk as a 4th option. I don't even mind him from a tournament perspective this week. Whereas the Kansas City Chiefs, they could spread the ball out to 10 different players. We know Travis Kelce is going to get his. I'm going to highlight him later on in this video, but the Jags for me seem like the way to go in terms of tournaments. I like Trevor Lawrence here, $6,700. We need 26.8 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. And as I mentioned in my cash game video yesterday, the Chiefs gave up the 7th most passing touchdowns and 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks just last season. Now, moving on to the running back position here, I'm going to highlight 3, but I do want to mention that I'm going to have quite a bit of exposure to both Derrick Henry and Kenneth Walker in my tournament lineups this week. Really like both of those guys, but I also really like Christian McCaffrey here this week. I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I talked about him in my cash game video just yesterday. He's priced at $8,900. We would need 35.6 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value, which is obviously a pretty high number, but if anybody is capable of getting there at the running back position, it is Christian McCaffrey, especially if he's going to be getting close to 25 to 30 touches in this Kyle Shanahan offense, like we saw him get last week. 27 total touches, 22 rushing attempts, 5 targets. We all know that he should be able to expose this Rams defense, who allowed the most rushing yards before contact in week 1. The next running back that I want to highlight here then is Travis Etienne Jr. of the Jacksonville Jags. Just kind of name dropped him when I was talking about Trevor Lawrence. Have no problem playing those two in the same lineup. I'd probably want to mix in another pass catcher like a Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, or Evan Ingram, but Etienne Jr. himself saw 15.5% target share in week 1 with 23 total touches. Really like that. Even at this price here at $6,900, where we would need close to 28 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value, I think he could do that, especially in this matchup here that does have some shootout potential. The Chiefs also gave up the most receptions and 4th most receiving yards to running backs just last season. And then the last running back that I want to highlight here is A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. Now, as I record this here on Saturday morning, I don't have an official word as to whether or not Aaron Jones is going to play on Sunday, but all signs point to him not playing. Obviously, if he does suit up, I'm going to bump down A.J. Dillon, but if he doesn't play, I'm going to bump up A.J. Dillon. In this matchup here against the Atlanta Falcons, priced at $5,900, we would need 23.6 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. Look, if Aaron Jones doesn't play, this guy's going to get all the goal line work. Not crazy to think that he could score 2 touchdowns in this game against the Falcons. Now, I do worry about this game a little bit in terms of pace of play because Atlanta just wants to run the hell out of the ball, and if Aaron Jones doesn't play, Green Bay might want to do the exact same thing. But Atlanta did rank 27th overall in rush DVOA last year, so I think if A.J. Dillon is getting 20, 25 plus touches in this game, he could have himself a day. And now we're going to talk some wide receivers here. Missing 2 big elite wide receivers on the main slate this week with Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, but still a handful of good plays at the top. One guy that I want to highlight here is Jamar Chase. I like stacking him up with Joe Burrow this week. Again, going with that bounce back theory at home against the Baltimore Ravens. Chase is priced at $7,900, so we would need 31.6 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. Again, this game here has the 4th implied highest total at 46.5 points, and Chase has notoriously played very well against this Baltimore Ravens team. His average stat line against this team is 7.5 receptions, 11.3 targets, 115 receiving yards, and half a touchdown per game. The next guy I got there then is Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, priced at $6,200 on DraftKings this week in a good home matchup against the Chicago Bears. At that price tag, we would need 24.8 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. Now, I'm sure most did this, but I took caution with this Bucs passing game heading into week 1. Really didn't know what to expect from Baker Mayfield, but honestly, I didn't mind what I saw in that game against the Vikings. I know that Vikings defense isn't very good, but what I like to see is Mike Evans getting a 26.5% target share and close to 55% of the team's air yards, a number that's likely unsustainable going forward, but throwing the deep ball to Mike Evans isn't going anywhere in 2023. And what I like about this matchup here is this Bears defense allowed the 6th most passing yards on deep throws just last season. Again, it's 2023, a brand new year, but this Bears secondary didn't improve so much during the offseason that Evans shouldn't be able to expose that a few times in this game. I know he's going to get some looks at the very least, and we saw the Packers offense kind of shred this Bears defense in week 1. Again, it's Baker Mayfield, but if Evans is going to be getting close to 25-30% of the targets, I like him at this price. Now with this next wide receiver play here, it's simple for me. I got Gabe Davis of the Buffalo Bills, who's priced at $5,800 on DraftKings in a great matchup at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. At that price, we would need 23.2 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. But why is it simple for me? I got 2 big reasons. Number 1, his teammate in Stephon Diggs, who is the number 1 wide receiver in this Bills offense, is projected to be a top 3 owned wide receiver on the main slate, so Davis is a pivot off of that. Plus, the Bills are implied to score close to 4 touchdowns on the main slate this week, the most of any team. And then finally got Deebo Samuel here of the San Francisco 49ers, priced at $5,600 this week in a good road matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. We would need 22.4 DraftKings points in order for Deebo to meet 4x value this week, and Deebo has notoriously eaten against this Rams defense, largely because they play a zone defense where he has a lot of room to run in open space. But over his last 5 games, he's averaged 6 receptions, 7.5 targets, 102 receiving yards, and 0.6 touchdowns per game, on top of having 2 rushing touchdowns during that 5-game stretch. And he also led this 49ers team in targets per route run versus zone just last season, even with Brock Purdy. I know there's a lot of talk out there on how Deebo hasn't had a big blow-up game with Brock Purdy, but I think this could be the week. And now I got a couple of tight ends that I want to highlight here. I'm going to highlight 2 higher priced guys in Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. If you're looking for some cheap tight ends, I did highlight quite a few in my cash game video yesterday, so again, make sure you go check that out. But again, talking Travis Kelce and Darren Waller here, I have no problem spending up for tight ends in my tournament lineup. Highlighted this game earlier between the Jags and Chiefs. Really like the Jags passing attack, but I also like running it back here with Travis Kelce at $7,600. Where we would need 30.4 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. Now, could Travis Kelce be limited coming off that hyperextension of his knee? Yeah, he absolutely could, but I'm struggling to think here. Why would the Chiefs force him back if they know he has a high chance of re-injury? I just don't foresee that happening. This is a team that has a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl again. They're not going to force one of their star players to rush back from an injury. So if he plays this week, he should be good to go. And the Jags ranked 26 overall in fantasy points per game, 2 tight ends in 2022. And I expect the Chiefs to force feed Travis Kelce in this game after their week 1 loss against the Lions. And then I got Darren Waller there of the New York Giants. Obviously kind of a weird week 1 where the Giants just got throttled by the Dallas Cowboys. Waller played a majority of the first half, but only played 4 snaps in the second half because they were getting blown out, and he was kind of battling that hamstring injury. But good news is, it doesn't sound like he has any injury designation here heading into week 2. And what I did like from that first half in that game against the Cowboys is he saw a 42% target share. Even though they were getting blown out, the ball was going his way. And the Cards have notoriously been very bad against tight ends, going back to the flow chart if you've been playing DFS here for a handful of years. So I do like the matchup against the Cardinals, and at $5,500, we would need 22 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 4x value. I think he could go well above that. And then finally going to wrap up the positional plays here with some defenses. We'll keep this short and sweet. Highlighted some cheaper defenses in my cash video yesterday, being the Arizona Cardinals and the Tennessee Titans. But if I'm going to spend up here this week, and if I can find that extra money, it would be really nice to get up to the 49ers and or the Dallas Cowboys. 49ers here priced at $4,100. Good matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. Would need 16.4 DraftKings points in order to meet 4x value. Sure, that Rams offense looked pretty good in week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks, but this 49ers defense is a monster, completely different than the Seahawks, and we know that Stafford threw 8 interceptions in 9 games last year. We know there's still no Cooper Kupp, and that offensive line is pretty bad for the Rams. I think the 49ers should be able to expose that. Now with the Dallas Cowboys here, they were a monster in week 1. Obviously playing Daniel Jones, I'm not going to put a bunch of merit into that, but they wrapped up 3 turnovers, 7 sacks, and scored 2 defensive touchdowns, put up 37 DraftKings points. No, I'm not banking on that here in week 2, but they do play Zach Wilson of the New York Jets, and they absolutely could get after him. Priced at $4,000, we would need 16 DraftKings points in order to meet 4x value. Obviously, they're very capable of doing that. And then another cheaper defense that I do like here for tournaments is on the other side of that game between the Cowboys and Jets, as Jets defense absolutely has some playmakers on it. Priced at $2,700, would only need 10.8 DraftKings points in order for them to meet 4x value. They scored 20 last week against the Buffalo Bills, who are supposed to be one of the better offenses in the league. And I know that this Cowboys team did dominate last week, but it's not like Dak had to do a lot for the Cowboys. And this is a quarterback who had 15 interceptions last year in just 12 games. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's have ourselves a great weekend here, folks. Let's win some money on this week 2 main slate. In the meantime, I'm out of here.